Okay, hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar hosted by Condo Control is exploring virtual AGMs, what you need to know if you're considering one. With us today, we have Richard Remratten, who is the virtual meeting specialist at Condo Control. So he knows everything about virtual meetings. So please do feel free to ask questions as they come up. We have Jake Fine with us, who is a condominium lawyer with Lash Condo Law, who's a very reputable law firm dealing with condo issues in Ontario. And my name is Kim. I am the senior content writer at Condo Control, and I will be hosting today. Just a couple housekeeping rules before we really get started. So this webinar is being recorded. A follow-up email will be sent out to all registrants with the recording once the link becomes available. So if you are unable to attend the full thing, you will receive a recording later. Please use the Q&A functionality at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions that you have, and we'll be checking them throughout the webinar. All attendees are muted, so if you do have questions, yes, Q&A is the way to go. And after the webinar, there will be a very short Zoom survey that we'd ask you to fill out so we can get feedback and improve future webinars. So on the agenda today, we will very briefly go over the evolution of AGMs and how virtual became more popular. We will look at the differences between traditional and virtual AGMs. We'll look specifically at Condo Control, just so you can get a peek at how our tool works. Perhaps you have hosted a virtual AGM before and you weren't really happy with how it went. So this could be an alternative to consider. And then we'll look at some legal aspects at the end, because that can be a little bit scary, and that's sometimes a barrier for condominiums and a reason why they don't pursue this option. And at the end, we'll take your questions. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. We'll cover right now just traditional in-person AGMs versus virtual and hybrid. We'll look at some legislative changes that made virtual and hybrid possible, and then current requirements and options for condos in Ontario. So traditional AGMs differ from virtual and hybrid primarily in their format, their accessibility, and the interaction. So in person, self-explanatory, you show up, everyone gathers in the physical location, you have to raise your hand or wait to ask questions, but anyone can speak without being unmuted. With virtual, all or almost all attendees are online, and then that does make it a little more challenging for people who may want to ask questions or participate because they do have to wait for a certain time. You also have to have a moderator getting those questions. And hybrid combines the best attributes of in-person and virtual, sorry. And while it may take a little more planning, it is the most accessible format because it gives participants multiple options. So how we got here, essentially COVID was the turning point. Before that, condominiums in Ontario did require a bylaw in order to host meetings, AGMs virtually. It was still possible, but yeah, bylaw needed to be in place. Once COVID hit, there was a state of emergency declared, and electronic voting was permitted even without a bylaw, and that's just because business did need to continue. However, it would have been impossible to have hundreds of people in the same room. So the government said, you know what, you do what you got to do to get the work done. And then there was some delay. Condominiums, not all condominiums were able to conduct their AGMs by the deadline. So that the deadline was extended, and eventually what happened was Bill 91 was passed, and basically people realized, you know what, virtual is actually kind of a good thing, especially if condominiums want to embrace it, because it does encourage more participation. It can make things a lot easier. So the rule was, is indefinite now that your condominium can have a virtual AGM even without a bylaw. However, condominiums are absolutely welcome to put limitations, restrictions, or whatever changes that they'd like in place in those bylaws. So they can basically customize, I'd say, rules surrounding virtual AGMs if they prefer to do that, and that just gives them a little bit more control. So currently, condominiums, as I stated, they can do in person if that is what your community prefers. You are still absolutely allowed to do in person. You can do virtual, and you can have the hybrid format. And the biggest thing here, and Jake may be able to speak more to that later, but the only requirement is that people have to be able to reasonably participate. So they need to be able to ask questions, they have to be able to vote, and they have to fully take part in the discussion if they choose to do so. So we're gonna bring up a first poll here, if you don't mind. If you've never hosted a virtual hybrid AGM before, what was the main reason for not trying it? So you can choose one. And at the bottom there, we do have, I have tried it, but I didn't really like it. Okay. So we've got, it looks like not really knowing where to start, that is completely fair, is one of the main reasons. And then we've also got, we just kind of prefer doing it in person because that's what's worked, that's what's familiar, and that's what owners prefer to do. Just one more minute here. Okay, so yeah, those are the top two, either just happy the way things were, or we weren't really sure where to start. So hopefully this webinar will help give you an idea of what you can do to get started. All right. Take a look there. So how are virtual AGMs different than traditional? Pretty self-explanatory, but we will go over a few minor details here. So logistically, while virtual might sound like there's more, you still have to send out packages and do the notifications. Those apply to both traditional and virtual. However, with the traditional, you have to get the space, you have to get the people and make sure they're available for the date that you have in mind. Many communities do choose to offer light refreshments and some snacks. You have to ensure there's adequate seating, and then you have to actually have the head table and seating for the panelists. With virtual, you may be able to cut down on some of those steps. You do need to book the e-voting provider. So that is the big thing there. You need the appropriate company or software to help you. And then many communities do choose to hire a moderator as well. And this kind of takes the stress off of you or the staff responsible for organizing, because they kind of do the heavy lifting. And then you are just responsible for ensuring that the meeting goes according to plan. If you do hybrid, you do have to do a little bit of both. However, the venue space is generally a lot smaller. Seating is less, you pay less for food and drinks, etc. And then for hardware, with the traditional, you still need physical voting materials. You need laptop for the slides, the projector for displaying slides, and if it is a large meeting, generally audio equipment is required. With virtual, you definitely need internet connection and a device capable of connecting to the internet. You do need a microphone and webcam for the head table participants and to ensure that people participating virtually can see and hear. And you need that meeting platform, and that is often provided with third-party moderator. And then success rates, this is probably the biggest thing, and I'm going to pass it to Richard shortly. But speaking specifically to condo control, we have completed hundreds now of virtual AGMs, and we've had a 99.9 success rate, which is huge because, if you don't meet quorum, then you have to do all the rescheduling. It's a lot of time and it's a lot of money wasted. With the virtual AGM, it's almost 100% guaranteed that you will reach quorum on the first try. Okay, and with that, Richard, I will let you explain a little bit about condo controls, virtual AGMs, and AGMs in general, like what we can expect if we want to try one.
Sure. Thank you very much, Kim. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Richard, and I am the virtual meeting specialist here at Condo Control. I do see a lot of people in attendance that I recognize, so I'm happy to see that you're all here, and I'm more happy to see a lot of people that I don't recognize. So first, I'm going to want to walk through why virtual AGMs in general, and more specifically with Condo Control, have been so effective, as Kim was just mentioning, and why so many communities are seeing such positive results. So let's start with the first point there, which is participation and accessibility. As we all know, one of the biggest challenges with your traditional in-person AGM is simply getting people to attend, hitting your quorum. People have busy schedules. Some owners, they might live off-site or they live out of town. Other owners could have mobility issues, and for the most part, people may have prior commitments that just make it hard to be there in person. With a virtual AGM, you kind of remove those barriers. People can join from their living room, they can join from their car while they're traveling. We've consistently seen that when meetings are virtual, participation goes up significantly. Often we don't even reach the 25% mark for quorum. We often hit 50% or above. Um, because of this, boards are able to engage with a much larger portion of their community as a whole. The next point we have up here is cost savings. So if if a lot of our attendees here are used to in-person meetings, just how expensive they can get. Sometimes you'll have to book a venue, you'll have to print out AGM packages, you'll also need some spare ones to bring to the meeting. Sometimes you'll even have to arrange for, refreshments or catering, extra staff. Sometimes you might need audio or visual equipment, which can add up really quickly in costs. By hosting it virtually, communities pretty much eliminate most, if not all, of these expenses because everything is handled online. All your notices are sent out online, your registration, your voting. This money saved and then just go right back into the community, further your improvements, your maintenance, for helping keeping your fees lower for all your owners. So next up we have here is the convenience and flexibility of it. So this applies to both the owners who would attend and the boards who have to plan it all. Owners don't have to carve out, extra travel time or rearrange your whole evening just to attend this one meeting. You can log in easily even from your living room and still have a voice in the meeting. For boards and management, virtual meetings also mean more flexibility in your scheduling. As we mentioned earlier, if you're doing an in-person one, you're almost tied to booking and finding a physical space, which can often force you to pick your AGM date even months in advance. It's easier to coordinate and garner participation, and because of that, quorum is met much more consistently. This flexibility, it reduces most of the common stressors that often surround AGM planning when that time of year comes around. And another critical piece here is security and legality. So we know that voting integrity is the top concern for both boards and owners who have never done a virtual meeting before. I can't speak for every platform, but I know that Condo Control's virtual AGMs are designed to be both secure and fully compliant with the laws governing condominium meetings. Electronic votes are confidential, they're tamper-proof, they're legally valid. That means that boards don't necessarily have to worry about challenges or disputes, and owners can feel confident that their voice is being counted fairly. The platform also provides records and reporting of everything that happens in it. So there's a clear, transparent record of anything if any dispute were to come up. And the best part is that all of this is built directly into Condo Control. It's an all-in-one platform, so communities don't have to piece together different platforms, for your unit file import, another platform for your notices, registration, electronic voting, and then the actual meeting management itself. Everything is all in one place. It's all built into Condo Control, including the actual meeting itself, which means Owners who attend the meeting don't even need to download Zoom. There's no third party anything involved. They just log into Condo Control and the meeting will take place right in their browser. So this makes it much more seamless for both management and owners. The result is a process that's not only easier, but it's far more reliable for everybody. Using an all-in-one platform, it can help you spend less time on the logistics of everything and more time focusing on just running a successful and productive AGM. Kim, if we can go over, yep, perfect, thank you. So if this is your first virtual AGM, it might feel like somewhat of a big shift if you're only used to ever doing them in person. But the good news is that the process is fairly straightforward when you book with an all-in-one service, and you'll have support and guidance pretty much from start to finish. So the first step here is communication. We have information sheets that you can include either in your preliminary notice or notice of meeting that we send to you, which will then be distributed to all of your owners through our platform. This will ensure that owners will receive very clear instructions well in advance of the meeting. This gives them information and lets them know how to do things, from how to register to the meeting, how to join the meeting, how voting works either live in the meeting or in advance of the meeting. And this will help set the tone for the meeting, and it ensures that nobody feels left out or confused on how to participate. The next one here is that we can expect a streamlined registration and voting process with scheduled reminders. So instead of tracking paper proxies or chasing down signatures, knocking on doors, owners can simply register for the meeting online. It's the click of a button, and they can submit their votes electronically as well, either ahead of the meeting or during the meeting itself. We also will send out automatic reminders, which only go to owners who haven't completed, either a registration or advanced vote. The system automatically manages quorum counts and secures records securely, which takes a huge weight off of the board and property management. You don't have to store your paper proxies for 2-3 weeks in advance and keep on top of them. On the day of your meeting, you'll also experience technical support and practice. So we understand that not everyone is comfortable with technology right away, especially if this is your community's first time doing virtual. So that's why we provide guidance and even rehearsal sessions for the board and management before the big day. This allows everyone to get familiar with platform, find out where all their buttons are, get used to their mic and webcam, make sure everything works. You can ask questions in advance so that by the time the AGM happens, everyone feels very confident in their setup and their ability and technology. So during the meeting in itself, you can expect some structure and professionalism. So the platform itself is designed to keep things very organized. Motions, voting, Q&A, everything flows very smoothly. There's also moderation available, which helps keep the meeting on track and ensures that all participants, virtual and in person, if you happen to do a hybrid, are able to contribute fairly and at the correct times according to the agenda. The moderator can call out movers and seconders, as well as conduct the polls for the motion. So boards and property management don't have to worry about this. It's usually all handled by a moderator. They also have the ability to unmute participants that are not part of the head table so that they may speak or ask questions at the appropriate times, and not just be able to unmute anywhere in the middle of the meeting and interrupt it. Your moderator is also there to provide technical assistance to owners via the chat and support the technical side of the meeting if there happens to be anything shown on the screen, such as like an auditor's report or a board report or anything like that, any images you want to share to your audience. And finally, after the meeting's done, you can expect full records and reporting. Again, this is all digital, so everything is documented: attendance, voting outcomes, even chat logs if you need that. You'll also be asked typically by your moderator if you want to record the meeting itself. And now we can even use AI tools to help summarize meetings and make very nice, clear notes. This means the board has a very transparent record that they can refer back to, which adds credibility and saves hours of manual work and record keeping afterwards. So overall, what you can expect is a process that feels very familiar in terms of how AGM should run, but there's just far less stress to it and much more efficiency. There's peace of mind knowing that everything will go through, nothing's going to fall through the cracks, and that everything is handled by your all-in-one provider and your moderator.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. We've got a couple questions.
Sure.
Right here. So does the corporation still need to change the bylaw since Bill 91 was passed?
So why don't we save that question because that's going to be
Sure.
addressed
Sounds
in my presentation.
okay, perfect. Uh, all right. So someone says yes, virtual is a good idea, but not everyone's comfortable with navigating such an event. I understand that it is mitigated since one can simply call in. In in the call case, can one vote this way, presuming they don't want to vote in advance?
Typically, when an owner wants to call into the meeting, because we can't securely confirm their identity by having them log in through our platform, we don't let them vote live during the meeting over the phone. There's also no way to interact with the UI over the phone if you're just dialed in. So typically, when we have an owner that wants to do that, we recommend that they submit a paper proxy to their property manager so that they can get their unit counted in.
Good question, and thank you. Good answer. Um, does your do you use an in-house AI or free AI platform? Do you have an AI privacy policy?
So the
Specific,
AI summary
yeah.
is really only if you request it. It can take a transcript of the meeting and generate an AI summary of it. We don't do this for every meeting. It's simply just by request, but it is not a free AI service.
All right, this is a good one. I know you've dealt with this, Richard. How do you handle multiple votes from owners in the same unit? So I imagine that's fraction votes, right?
Multiple votes. I'll say maybe there might be two or three owners living in a unit.
Mhm.
I guess this question is wondering if two or three of them all cast a vote. Once the first vote is cast, anyone that goes into their unique link to cast a vote from that same unit will say, somebody in this unit has already cast a vote. If you cast a vote right now, you are overwriting that unit's vote. So we always take the most recent vote from a unit. It won't count as multiple. It will just overwrite the original.
Gotcha. Okay. Does the meeting tool have a participant limit?
Oh, we can hold meetings. We've held meetings with up to 700 people before. We've never hit a limit as of yet.
Perfect. Okay, we'll get back. Thank you for submitting those questions. They're really good. We'll continue in a bit. Right now, we're just going to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. And this is from the admin side, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I'm just going to give a very brief look at the dashboard here. Again, this is something you can expect from a virtual AGM, despite which platform you decide to go with. Typically, all platforms will have this kind of layout or same information, but laid out differently. So we have a management dashboard here. This is just an example one in the demo workspace. It would give you an overview of how many notifications have gone out. So in this example, this condominium corp only has 4 people. We can pretend this is 100. It would show how many emails initially went out to owners as a notice and how many reminders have been sent out. You can see how many people have submitted proxies and how many you have left to reach your quorum. How many people haven't responded at all? How many people have RSVP'd? How many paper proxies have you received? As a quick overview, we have details tab. This would let you edit all the information that goes out with your package. So your cover letter would go here, your title. This is what would be emailed to all owners. This would be the title of it. We have the dates for your meeting, letting people know when the election will end, when the actual event date is, and a ballot. So again, this is just a fake ballot here. This just has a proxy nomination and a vote in favor of a resolution. You have an administrator dashboard. So what this does is if an owner gives you a paper proxy, you can actually upload it to the system here and put in their selections as well. So you have proof that you have the paper version and proof of what they selected in that paper version to go up against what you've put in, just in case that happens to get contested. We have arrears form. So, if you have an owner in arrears who can attend the meeting, but we don't want to count their vote, you can add them here. You can remove them here. Everything is flexible. So if they've already voted and you add them here, it actually will not count their vote, but it'll still let them attend. If you remove them, then the system will count their vote again. You have reports. You can download many reports on who attended, who said they're gonna RSVP and attend the meeting. This is especially useful if you're running something like a hybrid meeting, or even if you're just running an in-person meeting completely, but just want to use electronic proxy collection. You have a sign-up sheet, so you can see those who have which units have voted online, which units haven't voted yet, and you can actually download proxies. So Jake will likely go into this a bit later, but you have two options with virtual proxy collection. You can collect proxies, which are the online proxy forms. You can have owners vote electronically and have it fill out a form like that, or they can vote by electronic voting, which is a direct ballot. A direct ballot is again completely anonymous, so you wouldn't be able to download those. But if you decide to go with an Ontario form, then you can download full proxy forms for every single vote that came out online. And as a manager, you also have access to a results page. This is not mandatory. We can enable or disable this depending on what your community wants, but you can see live results of how things are going over the 15 days or 20 days that you've had your notice out. You can see the numbers and how they are at that time. So that's all I'm going to show for our quick little management dashboard there.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Seeing the demo again?
Yep.
Good. Okay. So after you've seen that, for those of you who have not tried a virtual meeting, or maybe you have, didn't like it, would you try something like this if a moderator, such as Richard, were available to help you out? Okay, I like the enthusiasm. We've got a lot of you saying yes, most of you saying yes. And he definitely knows what he's doing, Richard. I'm sure you've had communities that were apprehensive about doing this, and maybe now they are repeat virtual AGMers.
Yep. At one point, that was everybody.
Yeah. Okay, that looks good. Overwhelmingly, 96% of you say that you would give it a go, and I think that is great. Okay. And now the fun part, where I will invite Jake to speak. We're going to look at some legal considerations for virtual AGMs in Ontario.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Kim. So as mentioned, my name is Jake Fine. I'm a lawyer with Lash Condo Law. As the name suggests, we are a condominium law firm that deals almost exclusively with condominium law in Ontario. So I know there was a question in the chat, and I hope this answers your question. So virtual meetings are now permitted under the Condominium Act. So Section 45(6) of the Condominium Act states that a meeting of owners may be held entirely by one or more telephonic or electronic means, or by any combination of in-person attendance and by one or more telephonic or electronic means. So in other words, virtual meetings and hybrid meetings are now permitted under the Condominium Act, and those bylaws that you were scrambling to enact during COVID are no longer required to permit the condominium corporation to hold a virtual or hybrid meeting. However, condominium corporations are still permitted to pass bylaws that govern electronic meetings, hybrid meetings, and voting. And these bylaws are still very important because the definition of telephonic or electronic means, as defined in the Condominium Act, is very, very broad. So under the Condominium Act, telephonic or electronic means is defined as any means that uses the telephone or any other electronic or technological means to transmit information or data. So while it does include some examples, that is a very, very broad definition of how a corporation may be permitted to hold a virtual meeting and how virtual voting may be permitted. And so a corporation can implement a bylaw to help limit or specify the means that a condominium corporation may be permitted to hold a virtual meeting or how votes may be cast at such virtual meetings. So for example, a bylaw may specify various requirements for the platform used to hold the meeting. And this may include requiring the platform to be able to allow for reliable identification. So this means to ensure that you know exactly who's present at the meeting, as well as for registration of participants, or require those present to have the ability to have real-time participation. So as Kim noted previously, and as I'll discuss a bit later, all electronic meetings must enable all persons present to reasonably participate. So we want to ensure that those present have real-time communication in order to be reasonably able to participate. Now, the bylaw may also limit or specify methods by which a vote may be cast at the meeting. And this can include ensuring that the meeting platform has a voting system that can validate and authenticate the identity of an owner or proxy holder and permit the voting results to be preserved as a record of the corporation. Because as we all know, proxies and ballots do form a record of the corporation, and owners are permitted to request proxies and ballots from any owner's meeting by way of the request for records form. Next slide, please. So, as discussed, Section 45(8) of the Condominium Act provides that an electronic meeting must enable all persons entitled to attend the meeting to reasonably participate. And of course, that's not a very clear definition of what reasonably participate means. However, as I mentioned, what's important is that we do recommend that corporations enact these bylaws to ensure that it's very clear as to what a meeting platform will have so that owners can participate in real time. Now, I'm sure that some of you, when you hold in-person meetings, you hear from owners that they want to have virtual meetings. And I'm sure that when you hold virtual meetings, you hear from owners that they want to have in-person meetings. And one of the toughest jobs as a property manager and a board of directors is trying to please all owners. And unfortunately, that is very unlikely to happen. But what do we know about accessibility and accommodation as it relates to virtual meetings? Well, we know that a hybrid meeting is likely the best way to accommodate everyone. There's an in-person component and a virtual component. Now, hybrid meetings come with their own difficulties, as do all other meetings. So, those factors will have to be weighed when deciding which form of meeting to hold. But for a virtual meeting, we know that there are certain aspects that make it very accommodating to everyone. So, or to many rather. So as Richard mentioned, you could be anywhere in the world and you can still participate in the meeting. If you're unable to attend, you can vote in advance instead of filling out a proxy form, which is quite complicated to fill out. There's no issues with quorum. Anyone who casts a vote at the meeting, even if it in advance, is considered present for the sake of quorum. So as Richard mentioned, virtual meetings tend to have a higher participation rate and less issues with reaching quorum. In addition, you could be at home. You don't have to worry about, let's say, childcare. You can be doing something else in the background. You can be making dinner. There are a number of factors which make accessibility for a virtual meeting greater than an in-person meeting. And one other issue that makes it more accessible is time. So we have real-time tabulation. So we know at in-person meetings, especially with those condominium corporations that have a large number of units, that tabulating the votes or even the registration can take a very long time and can delay the meeting. So virtual meetings have real-time tabulation, real-time registration, and we can also ensure accurate and transparent voting results. It reduces human error in terms of the counting, and so there are a lot of benefits to having a virtual meeting. Now we talk about record keeping. As I mentioned, proxies and ballots do form a record of the corporation, and so virtual meetings are no different. The proxies and ballots at a virtual meeting do form a record of the corporation and can be requested by owners through the request for records form. Now, what about the recording of the meeting? So condominium corporations have the option to record virtual meetings. And if they do record that, and it does pass through the corporation, either to the board or through property management, then it forms a record of the corporation. And if it forms a record of the corporation, again, this can be requested by owners through the request for records form. Some corporations choose not to have the recording used for records and used only for the purposes of the minutes. And in that case, if it doesn't pass through the condominium corporation, then it does not form a record of the condominium corporation. Another question we get a lot is about the question and answer box. So as you note in this meeting, there's a Q&A box here where participants are submitting questions to be answered by the panelists. This is no different at a condominium corporation's annual general meeting where owners have various questions that they want to ask the auditor, they want to ask the lawyer, they want to ask property management. And so we do get requests as with respect to the question and answer box. Now, it doesn't necessarily form a record of the corporation. It may be good practice for your corporation to send out the question and answer box from your virtual meeting and append it to the minutes of the meeting so that it does form a record of the corporation and all owners have access to that question and answer box, because there are times that owners may not see the questions or the answers that are presented in that question and answer box, but it may be pertinent to something that they're interested in. And finally, one benefit to virtual meeting is number one, how many votes you have, how many proxies you have, quorum, well in advance of the meeting. If you looked at sorry, Richard, what do you call the
you could say like a dashboard.
Dashboard, that's the word I'm looking for. If you look at the dashboard that Richard presented, you get a full accounting of everything that is received in advance of the meeting. And while you're not supposed to necessarily look at the votes, it does help, let's say if your corporation is trying to pass a bylaw, to determine whether or not you have enough participation to even vote on the bylaw. And this can be helpful to corporations if in advance of the meeting, if they do wish to adjourn the voting on the bylaw to try to attain further owner participation to hopefully pass the bylaw at a future meeting.
Good point, yeah.
Now, a question is asked, are decisions made at a virtual meeting legally valid? And there is no reason to consider decisions at a virtual meeting to be invalid as compared to a in-person meeting. Now, as I mentioned, the Condominium Act does permit virtual meetings. And so as long as that meeting is duly called in accordance with the Condominium Act, the decisions made there should be valid. Now, there is another issue that we see come up more often now with virtual meetings, and that is candidate nominations that are delivered to the corporation after the notice of meeting has been issued. Now, the Condominium Act doesn't necessarily contemplate what to do when receiving this nomination after the issuance of a notice of meeting. So if we look at this from a in-person meeting perspective, and let's say we use the more, I guess, archaic form of sending notices by mail, because now notices can be sent by email, what would happen in the past is if an owner did submit their candidacy after the notice of meeting, that owner would have to stand up at the meeting, run from the floor, deliver their candidate disclosure, and then would be added to the ballot. Now, this may affect that owner in terms of their inclusion on a proxy. So anyone who voted in advance, unfortunately, would not likely be able to vote for this person. However, now with the virtual meetings and the issuance of the notice of meeting and documents by email or virtually, what do corporations do if a nomination is received after the issuance of the virtual meeting? Well, the regulations provide a little bit of guidance on this. And the regulations of the Condominium Act say that if an owner does not meet this deadline, then they must provide that disclosure at the meeting. Now, that only tackles part of it. The question is asked, do we add these owners to the ballot? Should we still send out their nominations? What do we do with this owner who has submitted their candidacy after the issuance of the notice of meeting? Well, unfortunately, there's no real guidance on this. It hasn't been something that's discussed in the courts. So each condominium corporation generally deals with this differently. And it's really up to the board and management at that time to decide how they want to proceed. They may wish to add the candidate to the ballot because it's electronic, distribute their disclosure to the owners so that they're fully aware of who they're voting for. And then at the meeting, that individual's disclosure form can be appended to the minutes. Other corporations may decide, you know what, there was a deadline, it was clear the owner missed the deadline, so they're going to have to run from the floor as if this was an in-person meeting. So these are a couple interesting things that we see quite often, and something that your corporation may face going forward. Now, one quick story just about virtual meetings and in-person meetings. So I had an AGM this week, and I showed up early to review the proxies, and it turns out that the corporation was locked out of the venue. And it was at a church, and it was a Monday, and the church was closed. And we had no way of getting in. And so we were very much ready to hold this meeting in the parking lot. We were lucky it was warm out. I cannot imagine what this would have been like in the winter. But although we did get into the meeting or into the venue eventually, the meeting was significantly delayed. And it just made me think about, virtual meetings and how, that's one issue that you don't have to worry about. You're not locked out of the virtual meeting platform. That's going to happen. It's going to be there. While you may, sometimes some people have some difficulties with connecting, that can be easily resolved by speaking to the meeting provider. However, it was just an interesting story that I think tied in perfectly with our presentation today.
I'm glad you guys got it.
Oh,
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
pretty much.
I touched on that.
Okay. Okay. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. I will return to these questions here. We've got a few more. How does a hybrid work physically at the location? So yeah.
There's many setups for this. The best way to think about a hybrid is really you're having a virtual participant with many people in the room with them. The best ways to do a hybrid obviously depends on the community size and how many people you expect to have in person. Ideally, you have either a large TV or a projector screen where you can project the meeting on so that everybody can see it. Of course, this is if the hybrid is on a grander scale where you're expecting, over 10 people, and not simply having, one or two owners visit your house and three of you are on one computer. You would have some kind of projector, a TV. You would need a microphone so that if somebody were to ask a question and there's 30 of you, we need to be able to pass the microphone around so we can hear them. Or they'd have to come up right to the laptop. Sometimes you do hybrid meetings where a table is actually all in person together, along with some owners. So you would have to physically have a head table there. It's almost like you're setting up an in-person AGM, but at a smaller scale. And what you're doing is you're connecting that in-person section of the meeting to the rest of the virtual participants. So you really just need a laptop, a webcam, a microphone, and some way to show all the owners in that room the rest of the meeting.
Okay. Okay. I think this, if you just wanted some clarification here. So if a unit votes twice, two different people, which one counts?
So it's the most recent vote. So I see, that person asked the question, is it by the date? That's correct. It's by the most recent one that was submitted.
Is there any way to know if the AGM is being recorded by attendees?
Yep. So if anybody hits any kind of record button, Zoom actually automatically detects that. So if you're looking at this webinar in the top corner, you might see that it actually says recording, because Zoom does know a lot of, well, at least main apps, it would know that it's recording and it will let you know. Obviously, if somebody has like their phone out and they're pointing it at their monitor or something like that, we can't police something like that, and Zoom will not let you know that that's being recorded.
But that would be the case with an in-person meeting too. Someone could do that in theory. Can a vote be changed after it's submitted?
Yep, you can change your vote up until the board and PM decides to close voting.
Okay. What is the typical access control for the apps? Are board members usually accessing the admin portal, or is that something the management company controls? And I think that's case by case, probably.
Yeah, you're correct. It's usually the PMs that we give access to this for, but if the boards really want that, we can add it for them as well.
Okay. Does your virtual meeting support the new Ontario Smart Proxy form?
So actually, our electronic proxy submission was actually, it was like the Ontario Smart Proxy form before it existed. Um, it allows owners an easy way to just ask them simple questions one by one. They're selecting their answer, and it is filling it out onto a real proxy form. So it was doing that actually before the Smart Proxy form came out.
Okay. When receiving the information in advance, such as proxies, can directors ask for what the results are so far? Or those who
This
may
might be a
be
Jake question here.
Yes, so it's not recommended that this information be disclosed because at the end of the day, as directors, you're also owners, and this information should not be shared in advance. However, as I mentioned, generally speaking, you can see numbers which might be helpful for bylaw purposes. You can see that 50 people have submitted proxies or have voted in advance, and only 10 people are showing up in person, but you need 62 votes to pass the bylaw. So from that perspective, it is helpful, but you shouldn't be looking at how owners have voted
who's voted
exactly in
in.
advance.
Okay, got it. How do we find the cost? So if you want, I'd say if you're interested in this, you can definitely reach out to Condo Control. For that, we kind of do it, tailored to your needs. So it depends. This is for Jake. Do you think a virtual meeting alleviates the mayhem that can ensue in a physical meeting with owners talking over each other?
Very much so. It is much easier as the chair of a meeting to control a virtual meeting. Number one, there is a mute button, which is very helpful, but it also goes by raise of hands. And so using a platform such as Condo Control, one person is only permitted to speak at a time. So you certainly are able to control those speaking over each other. And if someone is rambling on too long or they're getting off topic, and if necessary, you are able to mute them and move on to the next person.
Perfect. Great point. This is a good question. Do you have to use Condo Control to do virtual meetings?
The answer there is no. So you don't need to have a condo control account. Your corporation doesn't even need to be condo control clients. When we get your unit information, your unit file, actually everyone who joins the meeting is kind of joined through a temporary condo control account linked to their unit. So they don't have to sign up for anything. All they're doing is clicking the link in their email and joining the meeting.
Perfect. That's something, I'm sorry, I should have highlighted before. You do not have to be a Condo Control user to use the virtual meeting feature. So I heard there's a necessity for e-voting provider. If there's no voting for directors, is there anything else to vote for?
Yeah. Sorry, Richard, you can go ahead.
Go for it. I was actually going to say, as you mentioned before, even though every electronic vote counts for quorum, so even if you have no vote for directors or no bylaw vote or anything to really vote on, you can still collect proxies in advance for quorum to even hold your meeting.
Right.
And sorry, just in addition to that, at every AGM there will be a vote on directors, but if you're holding a different owners meeting at a different time of the year, there may be a vote on a bylaw, or there may be a vote on a Section 97 change to the common element, something like that. So there are other items under the Condominium Act, which would require the vote of owners. That is not just the election of directors.
Good point. So this is a logistics question. How do you handle in-person votes when you're hosting a hybrid meeting?
Typically, when we have a hybrid meeting, there's one person who is in person that the moderator would be coordinating with. We have a list of owners who vote online, just in case someone happens to, try to be sneaky and vote online and then go in person to the meeting. We would tally up our online votes. We coordinate with the in-person scrutineers and their votes, and we add them together, and that's how we get a total number of votes.
Jake, this is probably for you. What should we do if we suspect a nominee has falsified signatures?
That's a tough question to answer. I would suggest you seek legal advice.
Okay.
Now, in a virtual setting, that's, I guess, probably less likely because the use of paper proxies are less prominent. But this is a concern that is certainly raised on occasion, and I would suggest you seek legal advice.
Okay, good answer. This is a bit of a tricky one. So co-ops are not governed by the Condominium Act, but Section 94 of the OBCA also permits meetings by telephonic or electronic means. So the language seems similar to the provisions in the Condominium Act. Do you have any experience in creating a bylaw for co-ops to permit virtual meetings? And if so, would you take the same approach for those kinds of meetings?
Well, I do not deal so much with OBCA corporations. And those that I do deal with, I do not deal with virtual meetings.
Okay.
That being said, if the regulations are similar and if the co-op's governing documents would otherwise permit this, then it is something that can be tailored similarly to a condominium corporation's bylaw to govern those types of meetings.
Perfect. So we have someone who is part of an older community, and they probably don't like virtual meetings just because of the technology barrier. So they're asking, how might we help those owners get connected?
So our way of connecting is actually a lot simpler than even connecting to this webinar right now, because we don't require any software. Anything that we do require is built into any device that can already connect to the internet, and that's just the browser. Um, so for one, all they would really need to do is click on their link, but we also open the meeting 30 minutes before the actual meeting start time. They'll be in a waiting room, of course, they won't be in the actual meeting. But from that waiting room, they can actually reach out to the moderator. And if they're having any technical issues, they can type to them in the chat there, or they can call support.
Okay, so basically they just get an email and then there's a link and they just have to click on the
And they're
link
in the meeting. Yeah. Once
and
you click
voila.
that link, you're in the meeting.
Okay.
And Richard, does Condo Control provide any, or would it provide, if requested, a tutorial?
Yep. We actually have a
Possibly
video
that.
tutorial. Even
Perfect.
before the meeting goes out and in the notice of meeting, and all reminders, there's a video tutorial on how to either vote in advance or join the meeting.
Okay, that sounds refreshingly easy. Does the app keep these AGM recordings and statistics for a certain amount of time, or are they eventually purged?
So any statistics, as in like your Q&A and your voting results, those are kept permanently. An AGM recording, if you request it, it is deleted after 45 days. However, within those 45 days, you can download it and have it saved locally.
Okay. This one is, I don't know if we can directly answer this, but let's say a property manager mutes someone who's trying to speak. Is that maybe that's why a good reason to have a moderator who's perhaps more objective?
Yeah, I listen, I can't speak to the specific situation. I can tell you that chairing a meeting is a very delicate balance
Yeah.
of permitting owners to speak because it is owners' meeting, at the same time keeping the meeting on track. Certain items are not appropriate to be spoken about either at that specific time of the meeting or in general. So there are certain cases in which muting a participant may be justified. But again, having a third party moderator is important. Also, I think having an independent chair is also important to be able to handle these difficult situations.
Wonderful. Can this be used for town hall meetings or owner requisition meetings?
Yes, it can. It can be used for all types of meetings. The only difference with town hall meetings is that you wouldn't necessarily need to collect votes in advance. And you're just using the virtual meeting part of it and not the e-voting part.
Right. Who is allowed to be a scrutineer and how are they elected?
So for virtual meetings, Condo Control acts as the scrutineer because, as I mentioned, and as it's mentioned, Condo Control tabulates. They have all the votes. They tabulate it in a secure fashion. So as it relates to virtual meetings, it's Condo Control.
And last question here, do you support dial-in in addition to using a computer?
Yep. So for owners who may not have internet or may not have a device, they can also call in and listen to the meeting.
Great. Thank you everyone for such good questions. So if you are curious about the virtual meeting, you'd like to learn more, we do have a link here that will take you directly to it, and Richard's going to share that in the chat. I'd like to thank Richard and Jake for their time and for their knowledge, and hopefully, if you were curious, you'd like to act on that and I'm feeling a little more confident about giving one a try maybe next year. You can plan for then if you've already hosted your AGM this year. And yes, I'd like to thank all of our participants for taking the time to attend as well, and for listening and submitting your questions. So any upcoming webinars, you can visit events.condocontrol.com or give us a call at 1-888-762-6636. All right, have a lovely day, and we'll see you later.
Everyone.